We are about to go live.
Awesome. Rock and roll.
We have 60 people waiting for the stream right now.
Oh, that's great. That's not bad.
So, hello everyone. I hope you can see and hear us. I see the chat going on among the members, so say hi there. You can also post there where are you from. It would be nice. It's a sign that you can hear us. Can you hear us? Can you see us? Yeah, great. We have a feedback. It's everything's all right. Nice. So welcome everyone. We have an amazing session today. As our special guest is today Misha Yurchenko. Misha is an author of multiple books and he does a lot of other stuff. Hi, Misha. Great to have you today here.
Hey, Karen. Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. Super excited to be here and share a bunch of useful tips with everyone today. First of all, Karen, thank you so much for organizing this. We were able to get this up and running within really just a couple of weeks, and we have a lot of attendees, so thank you so much. So let me start with just a quick introduction of myself. So I started as a recruiter in Tokyo, Japan, and I was working there for about 5 years helping tech companies. So my job was on a day-to-day basis to go to companies like Amazon and Facebook, talk to their hiring managers, and then help them find people for their companies. This was mostly sales, marketing, operations, some product management as well. And some of the companies I helped at the time were Netflix, Spotify, Amazon, a little bit with Google, Facebook already said, and then also some startups. I did that for 5 years, and then that was an awesome experience. Decided to take a little bit of a break and a hiatus. So I quit and went to travel for a couple of years around Asia. Went to lots of beautiful places in India and in Thailand. Did a little bit of soul searching, meditation retreats, that sort of thing. And then after 2 years, I came back and then I started, was really thinking of starting a business and something I wanted to do for a long time. And then sort of blended my recruitment experience with something more technology focused. And so I started a company called karis.io, which is a coaching platform that connects people to career coaches that are looking for help with their interview, with mock interview preparation, and preparing their resumes. So I'll tell you guys a little bit more about Karis later. But that's a little bit about myself. So I'm just going to go ahead, Karen, and put the screen up, if that's all right. And
yeah, thank you very much for introduction, Misha. And yeah, we are eager to see what you can share with us today. It's amazing to see your amazing background in the recruiting, but on the other side of the table, I would say, because most of our members are gearing up with all the kind of courses, certifications, knowledges, and skills to get a great job in the future in tech. And you are exactly the person who is sitting on the other side of the table and also reviewing this kind of resumes, CVs, and helping companies to decide about the best talents on the market. And it's absolutely amazing to have you today here.
Thanks, man. Yeah, so just to go back and emphasize, so I wasn't working for one tech company. I was working with many of them. So that kind of gave me an interesting scope into all the different companies and helping thousands of people. So all right, Karen, let me share my screen. Here we go. Window. All right. Does that look about right?
Yeah, that looks great.
All right. So today we're going to be talking about a bunch of different things, but the main theme is how to get a job at some of these top tech companies, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google. And it's, there's other tech companies, we can apply this to, like Microsoft and, Salesforce, but I'm going to focus on these, and we're going to refer to them as FANG, which is, maybe you've heard that term, FANG, just FAANG. So I'll just call them the FANG companies instead of saying the full list. So I want to keep things really simple. There's so much we can talk about in terms of interviews and resume preparation and all that, but usually there's a few key things that are going to make the biggest impact. So I really want to focus on those. And you can also ask me questions in the Slido, and I'll stop every few minutes to sort of check if there's any questions, and then take a bit of a break and answer those. So three big things that we're going to talk about. Number one, what are these companies looking for? What is an attractive resume look like? And what can you do to build that profile? Number two, how can you actually get an edge? What do you need to put on your resume to get through the front door? And then number three, how do you nail these interviews? Like there's so many interviews you have to go through, and most people drop out after the first one. So what are the things you can do to practice and give yourself an edge? Overall, I hope this is going to be practical and actionable. And again, if there's any questions along the way, just drop them in the message and I will answer those. Who am I? I already introduced myself, so I'm going to skip this part. This is a picture of me in India, actually, during a meditation retreat, and this was at the Spotify office. I worked with them for a few years. All right, so these are some of the numbers. So across the FANG companies in 2019, they received 24 million job applications. That doesn't mean applicants. There's probably one person that will apply for 2 or 3 or 10 jobs. So it's more like 18 or 19 million people actually applied. And out of those several million applications, roughly 3 million went to the first interview stage. Out of those, 700,000 got to the final interviews, third to fourth, fifth, sixth, and so on. And then out of those, 185,000 people were hired last year in 2019 for all the FANG companies. Now, you can do the math there. That's not a very good ratio. You're actually much more likely to get into Harvard or Stanford or some Ivy League university, which has much higher, 4 to 5% acceptance rate. So the point is, it's obviously really difficult to get a job at these companies, and you already know that. But the reason I bring up these numbers is we can really break down each each stage and really think about what you need to do for each stage to get past it and to the next stage. So that's kind of how I'm going to focus on the rest of the presentation, is just to show you how to get past the application, how to get past the first interview, and so on. So what are FANG looking for? Really basic. There's tons of things they're looking for that depend on maybe location and the company, but really it comes down to 2 things. Number one is, do you have the expertise in the role, which also means the technical skills? And do you have at least 3 years of experience? I talk to a lot of people who maybe have 1 or 2 years of tech experience or domain experience, and they just don't get an interview request, and not because they're not smart or capable, but simply because these companies get so many applications and they can afford to hire people that are very experienced, and they don't really have to babysit. So keep that in mind, that you may have the skills, but you may just not have quite enough experience. Number 2, the culture. Are you a fit with that company's culture? Are you willing to accept critical feedback? Are you an awesome communicator? Are you creative? And the best, how do you know that if you're a fit for the culture? Well, obviously there's, a lot of reading you can do, but having worked in another tech company that is also fast-paced and fast-growing, and where you had a lot of responsibility, that could sort of set you up for that experience. So these are sort of the 2 broad things that you should focus on. And of course, having an MBA and top education is a plus. A lot of people ask me about certifications. Those are all useful. You should put some of them in your resume, depending on the job, but don't list all of them out. It's a bit, it doesn't really add too much value. you can get 100 certifications, but if you've only worked for a couple of years in that role, or if you haven't really built anything, it doesn't matter what certification you have, because they want to see that you've actually built something with that experience. So to be a little bit more specific, so if you're thinking about applying for a job at a tech company and you ask yourself, am I qualified? Going back to these 2 points, am I a fit for the culture? Am I a fit for the role? If you're working for a large tech company right now that has a similar culture and is operating at a wide scale, you might be a good fit. The other consideration is, are you working for a startup right now that's moving really fast? Amazon, Facebook, they love people that have got startup experience because it shows that you're not afraid of failure and you can move fast. Ideally, you have both. I've listed out a few things here, a few links for you. If you're looking for the step before joining a FANG company, kind of setting up your career, like, one day my dream is to work at Amazon or Facebook or Google. How am I going to get there? Well, these are some huge lists of companies that are very well funded and up and coming. And CB Insights is a big research company that compiles this data. So I definitely recommend checking that out. And I'll just kind of show you what that looks like here. It's a research report. So they've got a lot of different categories: supply chain, they have fintech, ed tech, and you can just basically look through these different papers and look at some of these companies and see if they're hiring. And then you can apply for some of these companies, work there for 2 or 3 years, and then make your move to a FANG company. Another point to keep in mind is, it's okay if you join a startup and it doesn't work out. That's totally fine. There's a lot of these companies actually like that, like having some failure in your background. It shows that you're well-rounded. And then moving, Karen and I were talking about this the other day, but moving closer to a city where you're actually applying for that role is actually very important. I mean, you could be across the country or in a different country, and if you're competing with someone that's in the same city and can start tomorrow and doesn't have relocation costs and they don't have to relocate their family, they're probably going to choose the person that can start faster. So just consider your career transition. If you're trying to work in some of these big tech hubs for FANG companies, probably start getting closer to those cities. Now, this may be changing with COVID, obviously. This may be less relevant, especially if you're an engineer. It may be a little bit more flexible for some roles, but generally speaking, all these companies still have big headquarters and they're not getting rid of their offices. So it is still important. And then lastly, a tip on kind of figuring out what kind of people get a job at Amazon or Facebook. Well, look at LinkedIn. So what you can do is basically you can just look up people who currently work at these companies and see where they worked before. So I just pulled up a random person. I don't know who this is, but she's a product manager at Amazon. And where was she working before? She was an intern. She was a Cognizant for 1.5 years. And now she's been at Amazon for the past 4 years. So you can just scour LinkedIn for hours, and I do this all the time because I was a recruiter, and just see where people are making their career transitions. And you can also get some ideas of what companies to join that will make you more attractive for your dream FANG company. I'm going to stop there for a second and just grab some tea. Does there have any questions so far?
Yeah, I'm watching right now at this Slido. We definitely have questions there. Should I name a few, or how do we want to proceed?
Yeah, can you give me a couple? I'm looking at it right now, though.
Okay, so the top one with the most votes, like I think these are 3 votes. how to prepare like programming if I'm currently working as DevOps engineer.
Hey guys, I'm gonna skip those questions for now because we're gonna get to that.
Okay, great.
But if there's anything related to what I was just talking about, I think someone. Let me just see. Okay, so someone just posted this. Neither of the FANG companies has offices in my country. Is it a good idea to apply for a job in an office in another country? How do I prepare myself for this? Yeah, so the point is, if they don't have an office in your country, that makes it a little bit more challenging. You're a little bit less likely to get the job in Seattle or New York or wherever. But if you have the skills, and if you've been working 3 to 5 years and you're a good fit for the role, they'll relocate you and they're very generous with that. But if you don't quite have the skills yet and you don't feel very confident about getting a job there, then what you can do is what I just said before. Number one is get closer to that country or move to that country in a different job that's not a FANG company, so another tech company. And once you're there physically, then you can build up your skills there, and then you're there and it's easier to apply for one of the FANG companies. So I hope that sort of answers your question. I know relocating is a big deal, but it does make it a little bit easier if you're there physically.
And strategically looking at it, I think it's even a kind of advantageous as of now, because all these crowded places, people are actually leaving them. A lot of people leaving places like Los Angeles, for example, Seattle, just going more to the outskirts, to live somewhere there to kind of survive this COVID phase. And the rents are actually falling in many locations like this. What do you think, Misha? Like strategically seen would be not a bad time to plan your future, and maybe set a footprint already, like during this time.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's obviously a lot of concentration in big cities also. So there's even some demographic issues. I was living in Japan, and right now in Japan, there's the government is actually paying people to leave Tokyo and to move to smaller cities because they want they want people to move outwards. So on one hand, it's like, okay, that's kind of nice. You could have that sort of lifestyle, but then it also could lower the rent cost and then give you some different sort of advantage if you're in the city. So yeah, in general, I agree with that, Karen.
Okay, great. So I will set this question as answered, as there is this feature on my side.
Okay.
That's great.
Yeah, I don't see. What do you think? I'll just answer.
Well, if there are,
I'll just answer one more and then move on. So one person asked, in your opinion, what do you think if someone has an option to choose between a managerial role and a technical role to be in a game for a longer period of time? I don't really understand that last part of the question, but it sounds like you're asking about whether you should do a managerial role or a technical role. That's totally up to you and up to your also what your company needs at this timing. If you are going into a lot of companies like Amazon, like more like Facebook and Netflix, they actually really prefer specialists, and they hire very lean. So if you have really great technical skills, you can actually get paid more than a manager, obviously. And so there is an argument to be made to just kind of stay an independent contributor and to focus on your technical role. If you enjoy managing people, if that's something you want to explore, then I would say it's worth a try. I don't think there's any huge, there's no huge pros and cons for the business. It's more about what you want to do with your career.
That's actually a great question, Misha. I also think that there are actually, like, at many companies, not only FANG companies, there are kind of two tracks.
Mhm.
One is for individual contributors. These are more technical roles.
Yeah.
And another one is kind of manager path.
Yeah.
And one thing to consider, you just exactly spotted it. You actually have to choose your way depending on your qualities or what if you can manage people at all. It's a very tricky thing. You know, you could be a great programmer, but you could be a terrible manager.
Yeah.
And if management is nothing for you and people will hate you for being their manager, don't go this way, basically. But what we have also to consider or maybe point out that this track for individual contributors is a kind of shorter than the track of the managers, because as a manager you can grow like up to the CEO level of the company. As individual contributor you can grow, but at some point there will be you will kind of reach the top level pretty quickly. And what's your take on that?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. So I think you know, if you're in the same role for 5 or 6 years, you may be given some extra responsibilities, but you know, apart from pay raises, where is the growth coming from? Now, most people in that situation, they would be more inclined to go to another company, which is what happens, right? So if you want to experience working at different companies, then being a specialist is going to make you very attractive, because you're going to get calls from all these different potentially FANG companies. And with a managerial role, like you said, Karen, you can kind of move up in the company, and you know, they usually prioritize. Many companies will prioritize a sort of the managerial path, but I do think that is flipping because of the importance of tech talent, and I do think that a lot of companies like Netflix, they do provide very similar sort of growth opportunities for both managers and really specialists, because they want to keep them, maybe by paying them a lot of money or by giving them unlimited vacation or whatever other perks. And so I don't think I don't think one is better or worse. I just think, like you said, it's slightly different track, and you should explore both if you're unsure. But companies are going to be thinking about which one are you interested in.
Okay, great. Let me set this question as answered then, and maybe we can continue with the presentation.
Cool. All right, so let me, still good on the screen? Okay. So just a really quick overview of the interview process. So all the tech companies, all the FANG companies have a lot of interviews, anywhere from 3 to 16, as you can see with Google. For even more senior positions or really important hires, engineering hires, you may even have more. I would say most people are going to get between 3 and 8 interviews. The structure of interviews is going to be a little bit different. Some companies are very structured. So Amazon is actually quite easy to prepare for in many ways, because they kind of tell you how to prepare. It's very clear. They say, here are our leadership principles and our values, and we want you to come up with an example that shows that you were able to kind of present these and manifest these in your previous job. And it's really behavioral, which a behavioral interview, if you don't know what that means, it just means that they're looking at your past behavior and your past work experience as a metric to determine your future results. So what you did in the past determines your future. And most companies are doing behavioral interviews. But with Amazon, it's very structured. With Google, it's pretty structured. With Facebook, it's pretty structured. Apple and Netflix, not so much. So there's a little bit less information online if you're looking and researching about interviewing there. You're going to have all sorts of different types of questions, and the lineup of interviewers is going to be different. So that's okay. That doesn't mean you can't prepare. It just means you have to change your strategy a little bit and focus. Just focus more on the behavioral part and then just getting the technical part right. But don't expect to have a sort of a cookie cutter questions that you can answer. And I won't go too much more into structure, but all of them pretty much have the same thing. They have, if it's a technical role, they have a coding, whiteboarding, interview, more than one, obviously, if you're in a technical role, system design as well. How would you design Facebook? How would you design Netflix? Go, right? So that sort of question. And then you have behavioral questions. Tell me about a time when you had to make a decision without data, and how did that how did that risk pay off, sort of thing. So all of them will have those sorts of questions. Right now, there's a bunch of open roles because of COVID. There was a lot of hiring at the beginning of the year, and now it's declining a bit. But as you can see, Amazon is hiring the most people, followed by Google, and then all of them are hiring both tech and non-tech. These ratios between how many technical roles and non-technical roles change. I actually think the number of technical roles are increasing now, but right now this is about the ratio. And then their cultures, all their cultures are a little bit different. So this is really important to keep in mind. Just because you're not a fit for Amazon doesn't mean you're not a fit for another one of these companies. In fact, all their cultures are a little bit different, right? In fact, some of them are very different. So Netflix is really focused on people over process. I would say Amazon is focused more on process over people. So that's the complete opposite culture in some ways. And so you may or may not be a fit for both of those companies, depending on your previous work experience and your personality, and also what you're looking for in a company. You can click on these links below. I've attached or I've got URLs here to their culture decks and their some blog posts about their culture and some interviews. So I hope you guys find that useful in your preparation. So let's move on to really the first step. So you're ready to apply to a FANG company. Now you have this work experience, 3+ years of work experience. You've got certifications. You've worked for a startup or a large tech company, and you're ready to apply. You go on their website or LinkedIn. You press apply, and then crickets, right? Like you get no response for months. Or maybe you get like an automated message saying, sorry, we're not interested in your resume, but there's no real feedback. So the first thing I will say is don't just go online and just start applying for random positions. Really focus on quality. This is really basic advice, but I would rather you choose 2 positions that you're super interested in, and then just focus on making a great resume, and then apply for that role, and spend a few days or a few weeks doing that. Let me just show you an example of someone who got an interview request at Amazon and someone who did not get an interview request at Amazon. It's a couple of resumes. So this is, I've changed his name. This is not his real name, but this is an example of a good resume. So this is someone with a business intelligence background, and what I really like is he's just got numbers and achievements right from the top. I know how long he's been working in his role. I know what technologies he uses. I know about his SQL background. I know about his culture. He's worked in a fast-paced environment. He lists out all his technical skills at the very start, so I can just glance at that for 2 seconds, and I get a feeling for this person. And then all of this is very structured here. He's talking about all of his responsibilities here in bold, and then he's also talking about in concrete numbers, like how many queries that he's running, what improvements he made, and he's writing out the tangible outcomes. So that's something that these obviously FANG companies are looking for. And then the other thing you see here is career progression. So data analyst, senior data analyst, and then moving up to a bigger role in a bigger company. So structure, career progression, and using numbers and data in your resume are all super important. Here's an example of a bad resume. it's a little bit unfair because this resume is really bad, but there's really just a bunch of bullet points as a summary. Like I don't know anything about where this person is working or what their real skills are. They're just putting sort of really basic stuff like I'm a hard worker and I'm analytical, but I don't see any of that obviously in the things he's written here. And then there's no detail. There's basically no detail in what he's done. Now, I actually think this person is probably qualified to get an interview at least at maybe Amazon for maybe a junior role, but he doesn't really show that here. I mean, he's done all these things. He's been a Scrum Master. He's launched iOS apps. So I can feel there's a lot of experience from it just because I know who this is, but it doesn't show that. It's very vague. There's no data. There's no numbers. There's no career progression. It's just a bunch of sort of bullet points, and it's quite long. So these are just a couple of examples that you guys can use to compare. If your resume looks anything like this, then there's still a lot of work to do, and that's okay because we all have to start somewhere. And I've got a tool that you can use actually to help you out. So I'll show you in a minute here. So we've got, yeah, just to summarize what I just said, a great resume is career progression, the numbers, scope, scale, and then the keywords also are important. So when you're applying for a job, how does it work, right? If you go online and you submit your resume, the first thing that happens is it sends your resume to a HR system, which is called an ATS, an applicant tracking system. And all that does is track all the applications incoming for that job. So every FANG company, most companies have this now. And let's say you apply to Amazon for a product management position. Well, the ATS is just going to screen your resume, look for certain keywords. It's basically a robot. And if you don't have those keywords, it's not going to push your resume through. If you do have those keywords, then it moves on to a recruiter, and then the recruiter will look at your resume and see like, okay, this is good, and then you'll get that first interview request. So how do you get past the ATS? Well, there's a really awesome tool that I love to recommend, which is called Jobscan Co, and that is exactly for this purpose. So what you can do here is, it's free. You can scan this up to 20 times for free. You go on this website and then you upload your resume here. So I just copied and pasted someone's resume, and then you take the job description for what job you're applying for, and then you copy and paste it on this side, and then you scan it. And what it's doing is it's looking for keyword matches under qualifications and skill set. So this person's the 34% match for the role, which is not very good. So we can go down here and we can kind of look at what the problem is. Okay, we're missing 3 important high-value skills. Let's go check out what that is. So here we can see these are the words that appear in the resume on this column, and these are the words that appear in the job description. So in the job description, the word payments appears 6 times. So I think this job description was for a payments data analyst position in Amazon, whereas in this person's resume, only 1 time. So if you're applying for a payments position, now you need to put this word in maybe a couple more times. There's other keywords here that are missing: business operations, transactions, customer experience. If you're applying to Amazon, having customer obsession and customer experience, those are probably pretty important keywords to put into your resume. So this is a super useful tool, guys. I would really recommend that you use this for every single time you apply for a job, which means you're changing your resume for every job you apply to. It takes a few minutes and it's a little bit more work, and you're gonna have like 100 different, hopefully not 100, but you're gonna have a few different versions of your resume for different types of jobs. And this will help you get past the applicant tracking system and in front of a real human. So I hope that's helpful, guys. There's I would say 99% of people don't use this tool, and it's free, so everyone should use it. I'm just gonna grab a sip of tea. Is there anything you wanted to add, Karen, or any questions on using that?
No, it's so amazing. I was not aware actually of this tool, matching tool between the job and job role and actually your CV or resume. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, and it's really simple too. It's I mean, you could just do it yourself. You can just kind of count the keywords, right? But this just makes it easier, and all the companies are using an ATS system, and so if you just want to get in front of a human just to read your resume, it doesn't mean you're going to get the interview if you have all the keywords. It means you'll get to the human screening, and then the human is looking at the other stuff I was talking about. They're looking at career progression. Do you have the numbers in there? Are you working for a company that where you did a similar role? You know, so those are still obviously really important, but this is sort of one way to sort of get past the system.
Yeah, absolutely. The tool actually does more than just matching of the keywords. I also saw that it would suggest you some of the skills.
Yeah.
Based on their own experience and prediction system, what is really amazing.
It's getting pretty smart. Yeah, like they've been working on this product for a while. When I first found it, it was just the keywords, but now it's kind of predictive. It's like, hey, you know, you're applying for a job at this company. Most people are including these keywords, and so they have all this data that they're mining, and so it's a really valuable tool.
Absolutely. I just spotted a question meanwhile in the chat, but I would ask everyone to use Slido to ask the questions, but we will let this one go. Somebody asked, how many pages would you recommend for either CV or resume?
Yeah, so that totally depends on how much work experience you have. I assume if you've only had like 2 to 5 years of work experience, it should be probably no longer than 2 pages. I don't know why you would have more than the 2-page resume. It also shows that you're concise and you know how to bring out the most important parts for that job. And also, no one's going to read a resume that's more than 3 pages long, unless you're in a really senior role, right? If you're a VP of marketing or something, or a director, then that's different. You may have a lot of experience, but still, they're probably going to have a 2 or 3 page resume. They're going to be concise. So really try and stick to that number.
Yeah, what was funny, this good resume, it had actually 2 pages. I just noticed it. And the bad resume, it was 3 pages long.
Yeah.
But it seemed that this second guy had a little bit less experience than the first guy. So basically, he used the whole 3 pages to describe his stuff. And another guy just...
Yeah, I mean, you could write a 20-page resume, right? It's your career. There's so much that happened, but it's more about like, okay, what were my responsibilities? What were the actual tangible outcomes? So I was helping a friend of mine actually yesterday with her resume, and she was applying to Netflix. And her resume was pretty bad. And I was like, yeah, I'm sorry, like this is, you can't use this. Please don't apply. We really need to work on it. And she came back and actually made it really awesome. And the way she made it awesome is I just asked her a few questions. I said, okay, what did you actually achieve? You know, what were the numbers here? Like, if she was doing social media marketing for a live events company. And so they have all the metrics, they have all the clients that they're working with. I was like, just list all those out and show exactly how you contributed, and take out all the words that you don't need. So another good tip is when you're reviewing your resume, try and delete 1 sentence from each job experience and then 1 word from each sentence as a sort of an editing strategy to help you be more concise.
Yeah, great.
All right, so yeah, let's move on.
Yeah.
So the next thing you can do here after sending your resume, it's still, even if you use Jobscan and the get past the ATS, it might still take some time, so be patient. But what you can do is follow up with the recruiter and or the hiring manager if you can find out who they are. Again, this is where you can use LinkedIn. So if you are applying for an operations position at Amazon, you know, in a certain market, let's say in Dublin, I see this recruiters in Ireland here. You can basically find that person and connect with them, and then send them a message and let them know that you've applied and you're looking forward to their feedback. Now, they may not get back to you. It may not matter, but on the other hand, it could give you a leg up, because when they are looking through those resumes, then they'll remember, oh, like, yeah, John messaged me on LinkedIn. I recognize that name. Let me double check his resume. So it's like little things like that where recruiters are so busy, like they're looking at, you know, dozens or more resumes every day. They're talking to so many people. So even like little interactions, like a follow-up or a connection request, are pretty helpful. The second thing you can do, you may or may not know this. So if you go on, this is Toru Ishii. I actually used to work with this guy at Amazon. So once you connect with him, once you connect with anyone on LinkedIn, you can click their contact info, and in their contact info, it will have their email address. Sometimes it has their phone number too. So you guys may know that already, but if you don't, you can also follow up by email, or even give them a call if you're a little bit ballsy and say, hey, like I applied for this job. Most people don't put their number on there, but sometimes they do. So this is a sort of a slightly more aggressive way to follow up, but it'll definitely help you stand out. So moving on, I just want to say a quick word on how you're applying to this job. And I won't spend too much time on this, but most FANG companies have teams of internal recruiters, hundreds of internal recruiters who are hiring pretty much all their people. But sometimes, depending on the role, if the role is really tough to find, or if it's a new market, let's say if Amazon's just entered India a few years ago, or a new market in South America maybe, then they will probably get the help of an external recruiter, or also known as an agency recruiter, which is what I was doing for a few years. And so it's possible that some of you will get contacted by an agency recruiter, and they're not working at the company, they're working with the company. And so they can still help you apply, and it can actually be really valuable, but there's pros and cons to both. I'll say most people are going to be applying direct, and so this doesn't apply to you. But if you do get contacted by an agency recruiter, my biggest tip is find out if they're good. You know, find out if they've actually worked with this company for a while. Find out if they've placed people there. Do they have a good relationship with the hiring manager? Because if they don't, then it's not really helpful to have this third-party middleman managing your interview process. Now, if they're a really good recruiter, then they can obviously help you prepare for the interview. They can push the hiring manager. They can give you all sorts of valuable information about that interview, and that's great. And that's the sort of recruiter you want. But they're a mixed bag, so not all of them are great. I have a link at the bottom here, how to vet a recruiter. So this is a long blog post I wrote about the questions that you can ask a recruiter to see if they really know what they're talking about. So please use that if you are contacted by a recruiter. If not, with a direct application, you can expect an internal recruiter to contact you. Again, they can also, some of them are really bad and not responsive. And you know, in that situation, you can find a different recruiter on LinkedIn, or you can contact an HR manager and say you're having a bad experience and they're not responding to you. That's one way to do it. But most of them are going to talk to you for a few minutes, give you a little bit of preparation, and kind of help push you through the process. But they're not going to add tons of value. So just keep that in mind. Don't expect them to talk to you for 5 hours to prepare you for the interview. It's probably going to be a few minutes. So I just want to make sure that was clear. Did that sort of make sense? Because I know there's a few terms I'm throwing around here, Karen.
Yeah, it absolutely makes sense, and I see it more frequently that people would approach you, the different kinds of recruiters, recruiter companies.
Yeah.
We have to distinguish there are two types of recruiters which will approach you. One would be native, I would call them native recruiters coming from the company which is actually hiring people,
Yeah. That. So I call
and another one will be,
Yeah.
yeah, and another one would be just a recruiting company which is interested to match make companies with the talents.
Yes.
We are talking here in this case on this slide. We are talking about the second type,
Yes.
the recruiting companies, actually, right?
Yes.
Will you cover also like the case when the actual recruiters from the company will reach out to you, or can we discuss it here on this?
Yeah,
this
yeah,
space?
we can discuss it. I mean, I kind of talked about it a little bit. They're also a mixed bag. I mean, some of them are very slow to respond. Some of them are very fast to respond. But one tip is, like, just because they work for the company doesn't mean you can't negotiate with them, right? So they're sort of sitting in between you and the hiring manager, and so they can still help with a lot of things. For example, if you have an interview coming up or a final interview coming up in a week, or you're trying to schedule it, you can ask them to push it out a little bit further and say, hey, can you help push this interview out a couple of weeks because I want more time to prepare. So that's a lot easier than talking directly to the hiring manager, for example, right? So they can help sort of navigate those sorts of situations.
In the case when you have third-party recruiters, like coming from a recruiting company, they even have a little bit even more interest to actually get you this job, and they will sometimes go into more insights and will give you tips and tricks and will tell you a little bit more about the hiring manager, like what he likes or she likes and stuff like this. What will be almost never the case with the native recruiters approach.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I think a lot of people don't understand that because you would think, oh, well, this person is a recruiter and they work at Amazon, so they must be really good. It's like, well, they're trying to place 100 different job openings, so they're super busy. They have no time to think, and so they probably don't have too much time to spend with hiring managers and too much time to prepare you. Whereas an agency recruiter, like you said, Karen, their incentive is actually much more aligned with you. And the reason that is because they're getting paid by the company. So if they place you into Amazon or Facebook, then they're getting money for it. So they really want you to get the job. And so they're going to work really hard to prepare you and give you all the information that they have.
Absolutely. They're actually getting a commission once they place a talent with a company, right?
Yeah, big commission. So look, if you're if you just have a little bit of work experience, you're probably not going to get reached out to by an agency recruiter. But once you get 4 or 5, 10 plus years of work experience, and you're working for some notable companies, and you have some good keywords in your LinkedIn profile, then you might start getting these messages, and then you can, I definitely recommend talking to recruiters in any situation just to see what they have to say, and they can possibly help you apply for that job.
Yeah, great.
All right. Any quick questions on that? If not, I can move on.
I'm just going quickly through the questions here, through the top questions. Let's see if we have anything from our.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it's really related. There is a question: should we apply without have a good confidence that we can do that job, especially women, who they are very careful to switch their current job. So yeah, if you are not very sure if you can actually do this job, should you apply for it?
Yeah.
And I would
Go ahead.
Well, just a quick tip here. Uh, Sometimes it's so overwhelming to see all these buzzwords thrown at this job ad actually, and this is like it's in most of the cases this is not all required to have all the skills. This is just they just want to describe a little bit better what you will be dealing with, but they
Yeah,
will actually help you a job to get to the level that they need
absolutely.
actually. So yeah, don't be scared. My advice and to you, Misha, give your opinion on that.
I 100% agree, man. Like this was my life when I was recruiting. People would always be a little bit hesitant. They'd say, "Oh, I don't know if I'm qualified," and they would kind of look at each piece of the job description. The thing is, most job descriptions are, number one, they're flexible, and number two, they're just copy and paste of other job descriptions. What they really want, I mean, if you're a culture fit for the company, if you are ambitious and data driven, and you've worked at another tech company, some of these things I already spoke about, and you're not sure if you're a fit for the role, but you're interested in it, and you can't find another role, you're not super confident. When you apply, you're probably not going to go straight to the hiring manager. You're probably going to talk to a recruiter first, and the recruiter can talk you through the role, and maybe you realize like, oh wow, like I think I could do this job. This is really interesting. Or maybe the recruiter says, hey, actually, maybe you're a little bit too junior for this job. Why don't you apply for this job? And so the point is, you're having a conversation, and you're learning from the recruiter. Possibly the hiring manager could do the same thing for you, and then maybe you end up applying for a different job. And so I think there's really no harm in having that first conversation and seeing kind of what it takes and what they're looking for.
Yeah, very great advice. Also, it's not probably related to so much to FANG companies because they're super experienced with the hiring process. What I'm going to advise now, but many companies are actually struggling with the job description. So basically, there are some positions open for 1 year or even longer, and they keep changing the title of the role or like the description to catch the right people. And in so many cases, they're just unsure how to describe it in words. So my advice here, if you are kind of not very certain about this job position, go ahead and apply for it. What bad can happen to you if you do this? You will just have a chat. If you will get invited, you will get to know new people, this hiring manager or this recruiter. You will practice one more time your speech, your pitch, and everything. There are no disadvantages to this. It will just take half an hour, 1 hour of your time. And you know what happened to me and some people I know? Just throughout this process, they would just blown away what actually the job was, what was not described in the description.
It's
you
very
never know what is actually behind this wall, and you have to go into it.
Absolutely, man. I would say probably that's a great point as well. You don't really know what it is until you're in the interview. The other thing is, I would say probably out of all the people and the companies I've helped, like probably like 20 or 30% of people, it's a pretty high number, that go into an interview, they end up interviewing for a different position than they applied for, right? And that's huge. So you think you're going in for something, but I mean, like Amazon, for example, huge company, right? Just the size of it's like 1 million employees now. It's massive. So there's no way that you're going to know exactly what department you're a fit for. It's very difficult to know that. And so just getting in there, if you're a culture fit, great. Now after we determine that, what job can we find you that's a fit? And so many recruiters they have a list of like 10 different jobs that they think are a fit for you, and they'll go down the list and talk to you about them. So keep that in mind. I mean, there's definitely a lot of options, and don't stop yourself from applying.
Absolutely. And speaking of women and minorities, this is pretty much the best time for you folks, to hunt for a job, because most of the companies, and especially this FANG companies, they are eager to hire this kind of people who are underrepresented, or like women, for example, or whatever minorities.
In some ways, you have a better chance. I mean, obviously, you still need the skills and you still need to be a culture fit, but all the FANG companies have diversity and inclusion teams that are just responsible for making sure that they have a good ratio in their company, that their employment practices are fair, and also doing internal events. So it's absolutely a great time for anyone to look for a job at these companies. So yeah, let's just move on to talking a little bit more about the interview process.
Sure.
Cool. So let's say you get the first interview, move on to the first and second interviews. What can you expect? It's going to be different for the FANG companies, but generally speaking, you're going to be talking to either a recruiter, like we mentioned, or a hiring manager. So the hiring manager is the one who is your boss, to-be boss, and they're going to know the most about the position. So on one hand, this is an interview, and so you need to really prepare for all these different questions we'll get to. But then on the other hand, it's also a chance for you to make sure that this is the right position, like we just talked about. And so you can ask a lot of smart questions about the business towards the end of the interview, the last 5-10 minutes. Ask about the business, ask about the culture, ask about the role. And I've included a list here of questions for you. There's like 50 or 60 questions that you can use to ask in your interview. So one of the best ways to prepare for these, and for any interview actually, is to use what is known as the STAR method. I'm sure some of you guys have already heard of this, especially if you've been interviewing a lot. But it's basically a really simple framework to structure your answers. Because when you ask, when an interviewer asks you something like, tell me about your biggest accomplishment, or tell me about a time that you had to meet a tight deadline, you can think of all these different ideas and examples and just start talking and talk for 10 minutes. But really what they're looking for is a very concise answer of what was the situation that you were in, and what company were you working at, what was your job role, and then number 2 was what were the actual tasks, what were the responsibilities you had, and then number 3 is what were the actions you took to accomplish that goal or whatever the example is, and then number 4 is what was the result of that action, what was the outcome in tangible, in a tangible way, including numbers or percentages or whatever. So if you just prepare all of your sort of examples and stories for whatever company you're interviewing for in this format, you're going to seem a lot more structured and concise, and that is super important for these hiring managers who are interviewing so many people every day. They just want to get to the point, and they just want you to tell them exactly what you did and how you did it. So there's a bunch of links and resources here I included. I'll show you a couple things real quick. So number 1 here is just an example of the STAR method, and the STAR method, just to reiterate, is how you're answering a behavioral interview question. So this, here's an example. It's pretty short, but the question would probably be something like, tell me about a time where you were going through your team was going through difficulties and you came up with a good idea. So in this case, it was the advertising revenue for this newspaper I was working at was going down. Our advertisers were not renewing contracts. And then moving on to the task, what was my job? Well, my job was to come up with new ideas and incentives to help increase the advertising revenue and the advertisers. And then I go on to explain, okay, these are the 2 actions that I took. Number 1, I created a promotional packet. Number 2, I set up a training session for account executives, blah, blah, blah. And then the result, we signed 15 contracts with advertisers, and our ad revenue went up by 20%. So I could give this example within like 2 or 3 minutes, and it's not super detailed. It's still pretty high level, but this is the sort of answer, the type of answer you want to give for a behavioral interview question. Now, when you're preparing, you actually want to include a lot more detail, because, for example, if I'm an interviewer, I might listen to your answer and go, okay, that's a good example. Tell me like why did you decide to take these two actions? Why did you decide to work with these account executives? What was your promotional packet? What did it include? Why did you think this was a good idea? What was your budget? Who was involved? What were the teammates that helped you do this? Did you do this by yourself? What were the tools that you used to create this? How long did this take? What if you had half the time to do this? How would you change your approach? So these are all like a lot of questions that may be really hard to answer if you haven't thought about it. But when you're preparing, you can write out like a 1 page of just all this detail from that example, and then create a more concise version like this that you're actually going to give. And then in the case of getting follow-up questions, you're still ready to go into detail and to dive deeper into your example. So I'll give you another example here. So this is a concise version that you would give to the interviewer. And then this is something that we use for Amazon preparation. These are all the different sort of questions you can ask, or that you could be asked. And then you would just map out every single answer with the same format and as much detail as possible. And this could get to, I don't have the answers written here, but this could get to a page long. And that's something that you can then practice in a mock interview setting. So there's a bunch of stuff you can do to prepare for your interview, but I would say out of the top 20% of actions that give you 80% of the results, sort of 80-20 rule, this is just doing these exercises for the STAR interview is probably one of the best ways to prepare. So I could talk a lot about the STAR interview, Karen, but I just wanted to check if anyone has any questions on that, because it's...
Yeah, I know, Misha. Actually, Misha wrote the whole book on this only topic, STAR interview, how to do it in the right way with a lot of examples. And I forgot to mention, but everyone who is attending this session right now, at the end of the session, will have an opportunity to get 2 of the best-selling books. Misha's best-selling books, or one on Amazon interview process and another one just exactly on this STAR method. Just stay until the end. You will have a chance to get these 2 books just for free, just for you, exclusively.
Yeah, so there's on Amazon a lot. I work with them quite closely, and I wrote the book as well. So look, you can use this STAR sheet that I included here in the template to create your interview sort of stories. And for the first and second interview, probably 4 or 5 hours of preparation, writing out some basic stories. And then once you get to the final interviews, then you need to spend a couple weeks and at least 5 to 10 hours or more of preparation and actually practicing these with someone. So kind of before we move on to the final interview stuff, so the first thing is here, behavioral interviews, right? So that's what we just talked about and how to answer those questions. And then the second thing that's really important is just understanding the business model. And this also helps with answering questions, right? So if you understand how Apple invests in new technology and how they position their brand and why brand is super important for them, then you can better understand how their design and engineering works and how to prioritize certain things. Same thing with Amazon. If you look at this flywheel model, this is something that Jeff Bezos wrote on a napkin one day that shows how their growth operates. And basically, you can look at this and say, oh, okay, I sort of understand it. But why it's really useful is also because it helps you answer interview questions. So, for example, if you're in a marketing position or product management position, and they ask you, how would you increase traffic for the baby goods category on Amazon? Well, there's lots of different ways you can do that as a marketing person. But the really simple answer, if you think about this, is okay. We need to go around this flywheel. Okay, we need to increase the number of sellers, third-party sellers on Amazon, and that will therefore increase the selection of products, and that will therefore increase the customer experience. And then all this stuff happens at the top right, that lower prices and all that, and then that brings more traffic. So this is sort of the circular way of talking about it, but it's a lot of these business specific questions related to product and marketing can actually be answered by just thinking and imagining their business model. So I've included links to the business models of these FANG companies on a website called Reason Street, which has all the different business models and explanations. So super useful. Study that really deeply before you apply, or before you interview rather, at a FANG company. So moving on, so first interviews, second interviews, usually it's going to take between that and the finals, it could take weeks, it could take even months, especially for Facebook and Google. They go a bit slower in their interview process, depending on the position. There's a ton of stuff you can do. The number one thing you should do to prepare for both your technical and your behavioral interviews is to practice. And that was like really simple advice, but it's not just practicing with a friend, but practicing with someone that either works there or did work there, or that has experience in one of these tech companies. Most people that do get interviews and offers have at least practiced for 5 to 10 hours. And what does that mean? That means you're sitting one-on-one with someone and they're asking you questions and you're answering them, and then they're giving you feedback, and then you're improving, and then you're doing that over and over and over until you're confident, and you can go in there and crush it in the interview. So two tools you can use for technical interviews. You're going to do programming interviews, system design interviews. There's a bunch of different websites, actually, a lot of solutions you may or may not know about. AlgoExpert.io and InterviewCake. These are two sites where you can go talk to tech employees and then do live programming interviews. So you should be doing a ton of practice for that before going into any interview. And then the second place is my business, karis.io, and we focus more on the behavioral part of the interviews. So we have a lot of ex-product managers and ex-recruiters and HR people and hiring managers who will sit with you one-on-one and ask you questions and give you feedback. So if you just spend most of your time doing mock interviews, you're going to do really well when it comes to the real interviews. And also use the STAR method, which is what I just described about organizing your the structure of your answers. Lastly, don't try and do all these interviews on the same day, because it's really exhausting. I always tell people, if someone's trying to schedule 5 interviews for you in one day, don't do it. You're going to be so tired, and your brain's not going to work. So just ask nicely. Say, hey, can we please split this up into 2 or maybe 3 days? That way you can feel fresh and have some time to reflect and get a good night's sleep, and then go back and interview for another hour or 2.
Misha, I have an opinion here, or like something to add to this exact topic. What if you get into the loop?
Yeah.
Then you cannot split it, I guess, right?
That's not true.
And let's explain a little bit what loop is, because maybe not everyone is familiar with this.
Yeah. So, well, most companies have a semi-structured interview process, like I described before. The ones like Amazon specifically, and also I would say also Amazon, Facebook, and Netflix, they know who's going to meet you, and they try and set those interviews up all in one day. And so for Amazon specifically, you have the final loop interview, and this is usually anywhere from 3 to 6 or 7 people, and they meet you back to back, and then that's it. And then you get a decision in a week or so. So yeah, Karen, normally the recruiter takes charge of organizing that, and the way they organize it just depends on people's availabilities, but you can still push back. And this is why, this is your career. You only have not many chances to interview, right? You're probably not going to interview again in a month. So you want to get it right. And what you can do is you can just ask the interviewer and say, hey, after you get the interview request, say, hey, like I would like to split them up or make something up. Just say, hey, I'm really busy. I can't get off work, or make up some excuse and just say, I can do it over the morning of this day and the morning of that day, and just push them to split it up. And that's the best bet you can do, I think.
Okay, great. So it means that it actually works, that you can ask sometimes to split this loop interview, what will usually take your whole day. Like from the morning till almost like afternoon, you will be occupied only with the interviews back to back, and there will be even one person who will take you for lunch, and it will be actually in another interview. Indeed, you will have a like very relaxed chat, but this person will most probably provide a feedback on this outcome of this conversation.
Oh, totally. Yeah, there's no such thing as a casual interview. I mean, Google and Facebook do this a lot. They do a lot of lunches, team lunch and interview lunch. It's still an interview, so make sure you you're on your top game, and you treat it as an interview in a slightly more casual setting. But Amazon doesn't do that as often. It just depends on the company. But still, just be careful with that, and imagine that you're talking to someone who's going to be deciding whether or not you're a fit for the job.
Okay, great advice. Thank you, Misha.
So like that's most of what I want to say about the interview process and the resumes. I think, again, there's tons of stuff. We could talk about all this for several hours, but really it's some of these key points about mock interview preparation, using the STAR method, and then using a couple of key tools to make sure your interview, your resume gets through. So once you get through this loop, it's possible that you get the job, which is awesome, and congratulations. If you don't get the job, then you need to find out why. Oftentimes, it can be hard to get feedback. Sometimes the internal recruiters are really busy. They're hiring so many people, they can't bother giving you feedback. It's usually they're just a bit lazy, or they don't want to hurt your feelings because maybe the feedback's really negative, or maybe they're not very skillful in giving feedback. Maybe they want to avoid a lawsuit. Maybe some people say that they have policies to not give feedback, but that's kind of BS, because I've been able to get feedback from all these companies, so it's totally possible, just depending on how aggressive you are and also how good your recruiter is. So I would say the advice I give here is just ask the hiring manager, be strategic and polite about it, and say, hey, I loved interviewing at this company. I really appreciated meeting everyone and discussing this and that. I hope to apply again in the future. It'd be really useful for my personal feedback to know how I can do better. So if there's anything you can share with me about how I did in the interviews, then that would be really appreciated. And you can make the feedback anonymous. You don't have to tell me who it is. Just some sort of feedback would be super helpful. So I really encourage everyone to ask for that feedback, because then you just don't know. You just don't know what went wrong, right? And it's sort of like, how are you going to improve after that? It's possible they give you a short response, like, oh, you didn't have enough experience. That's fine. Follow up with them and ask them, can you be more specific? Work experience or experience in this job or a specific skill set. It might take some time to get a response, but I think it's definitely worth your time to push and get this feedback. Yeah, I hope that's helpful. And moving forward, one thing you do want to find out if you don't pass the interview is if it's because of the culture. You're not a fit for the culture, or is it because of the role? You don't have enough experience. So that's one thing I would certainly ask the recruiters. And then once you find out if it's because of the culture, then you should probably wait. It's probably going to be a while before you can apply for that company, because you're not going to change, probably not going to change your personality and your work style in a few months. right? So they may they'll flag your resume basically for culture fit. So it's probably going to be a year or two before you can get another interview. Now, if it's for the role, if you're not a fit for the role, then that's not a huge deal. That just means that that's not the right fit. The position's not the right fit. So maybe there's another job in the company, and if there is, you can apply again. People say 6 to 12 months. I say just go for it whenever. If you find another role, there's no hard rule for when you should apply. So if someone tells you there's a hard rule, just ignore them. There's not. You can just apply if you find another role, and then it's probably a different recruiter and it's probably a different hiring manager. So they don't even care about the other stuff. And then, like I said before, if you can't get a job here, and you could interview for other FANG companies, maybe you're a better fit for another one. The other option is to look for a stepping stone, right? Look for other ways to make yourself attractive. Look for tech companies that are hiring, that list I gave you before, and then make your way up towards your goal. At the end of the day, like Karen already said earlier, this is still really great practice. If you're interested in working for a FANG company, you have some good experience, you can go through this process, and I promise that it's going to be super valuable for you anyways in your career, because you'll get to see how these companies are hiring. And if you don't get it the first time, then I think you can try again the second time later. And at the end of the day, it's definitely going to make you a better interviewee for other roles. So I think that's it for the main stuff. Couple final things I wanted to mention just about Karis, the business I'm running. So anyone can have a free call with our coaches. So many of our coaches are actually ex-recruiters and hiring managers that work at FANG companies. So if you're interested to get feedback on your resume, if you're interested to do some mock interviewing, then you can actually do that with our coaches. Again, we're not focused too much on technical interviews, but just a general interview process, which is applicable for anyone. We can help with that. So you can sign up. There's a link below, free 15-minute call with any coach. And then also some free stuff. We've got the 2 books, Cracking the Amazon Interview, which is a step-by-step guide to getting a job there, and also the STAR interview, how to create those STAR stories, which I talked about. Just click on that link, and you can just input your email and name, and then you'll get that emailed to you in a few minutes. And then the second thing is there's a free list of job search tools I made for you guys. So you can download that from here for free. And you can download the slide as well. So I think that's about it. I really enjoyed this. So shall we jump to questions?
Yeah, absolutely. At first, thank you very much, Misha, for this presentation. It was very well structured, and it's a very nice guide. And we have it on record now. Everyone can watch it later. You will not believe, but we went from 80 viewers. Right now we have 240 viewers, and it was steadily going up and up and up throughout the whole webinar. It's amazing.
Wow. That's awesome. Very cool.
Yeah.
I'm glad
it just only shows how strong is this interest in this kind of topics.
Yeah.
And as you said, it's so much what can be told here and what can be discussed still. We just scratched upon the surface with this presentation, what was amazing. But there are so much also information more available to it, and we can talk about it for hours and hours. Probably.
For sure. Cool.
Great. I just shared, I will quickly announce that I just shared the link to this form, which you have to fill to get your 2, even 3 books, I guess, right? These are 3 ebooks.
Yeah.
Or 2 books and 1 kind of tutorial instruction. Yeah. So make sure to fill out this form, which I just posted into the chat. Mm-hmm. And you will get all the information from this presentation. You will get the slides as well. We will have a follow-up email communication going on with a short recap and all the important links which will be provided to you. out and filling this form, we can maybe already switch to the questions.
Okay. All right. Here's a good question. Yeah. Let me just read this one. There's a bunch of good questions here. Does changing companies frequently impact your career? Yeah, I think it can. If you have some great brands on your resume, then companies are going to hire you anyways. But if you don't, and if you're just hopping around every 1 or 2 years, they're going to want to know why. Generally speaking, from a recruiter's perspective, if you've been at a company for 3 years, that is kind of the minimum amount of time where you've actually been able to build something and to really learn something. So if you have all these job gaps, or if you're jumping around in your job a lot, that doesn't mean you can't get a job at a FANG company. It again depends on your skills and the brands on there, but less likely. So that would that would mean you should probably get a bit more work experience, like just stay in one place for 3 years. And I think that's really gonna improve your chances.
Yeah, it was actually a great question. And what would be the very minimal time to stay at one company? Is it 2 years, or is it really like 3 years and not less than?
I would say 3 years, man, because if you only it doesn't mean like, okay, so if you were an intern at a Tata consultancy or somewhere, and then you worked in data analytics for 1.5 years, and you're really good at that job, and that company is another big tech company, then maybe it's okay. You could probably still get a job at Amazon or maybe Google. So it's still possible, but again, you have to have that scope and those brand names, and you have to have accomplished a lot. If you can show you've done a lot in 1.5 years, it's possible, but less likely. So to answer your question, Karen, I would say generally speaking, if you're not working already for a top tech company, 3 years, 3 years is a good number.
Okay, great. I also saw in the list some of the technical questions, like what would be the right website for preparation for the web whiteboarding interview. I just want to stress that Misha is a great professional and expert for this kind of behavioral interviews, right, Misha?
Yeah.
Not so much for the technical part, but to me, this technical part, it feels more like mathematical. It's not a very it's not a very complicated thing in itself. If you just get your skills to the level which is required, and you will find plenty of information out. The behavioral part is kind of tricky.
Totally. Yeah. Well, look, I mean, if you go back to the slide, guys, in the beginning, I mentioned for the first interviews to prepare, the final interviews, I guess, for mock interview practice, I shared a couple sites like algoexpert.io and Interview Cake. There's a couple more out there, but those include whiteboarding, those include just programming interviews. So go on those sites just to practice the technical stuff. And then there's also, you might know about a site called codementor.io. And that's just more generally to help with your development skills. So if you're working through a problem and you're doing your own practice questions, then you can go on this site and it matches you with a more senior developer who can help you solve that problem. So it's quite useful just to sort of improve your skills in general. But like Karen said, behavioral part is really important as well. For a pure technical role, if you don't have the technical skills, you're not going to move past the first interview. But if you don't have the storytelling ability and you don't have a really structured way to explain your answers, then it doesn't really matter what your technical skills are, because communication is still really important. Communication and how you explain your results and outcomes and how you communicate with all these other top performing colleagues around you is super important. So I would say you need to practice both, for sure. You need to practice both technical interviews and behavioral interviews to be in the best position.
Yeah, but I would like to add here, Misha, a little bit. In my opinion, this for this kind of companies who have very distinct culture, their own culture, the behavioral part maybe even a little bit more important, because if you got it right, the behavioral part, but you are not up to the skills like on a technical level, you might get another job at this company, which is not so technical, where you were initially applying.
True.
But if you are perfectly like technically on a very good level, but you are completely not fitting like culturally to this company, you don't have the right mindset for them. I think it's a pretty much no-go for the whole company, right?
Definitely, yeah. And that's why I recommended like also working at other tech companies as well that are or startups that are fast-paced. And there's a bunch of lists there in the slides that you can look at. But yeah, totally, man. I mean, the culture is a huge part of it, and each culture is unique as well. So yeah, I think practicing that. I mean, you can't like fake your way into it, right? Like if you over prepare for an interview and like you spend 6 months preparing for an interview and maybe you get the job, but you're really not a fit, you'll get fired in 3 months. So there's obviously like there's a sort of balance. Like you want to prepare a lot so you're more confident, and you don't want to lie about anything. Obviously, you don't want to stretch the truth. You want to be yourself. You should be honest about your experience, and actually that honesty is super important, right? It's like if you worked on a project and it wasn't on a very big scale, and they ask you about that, don't try and make it seem bigger than it was, right? Because then that's just going to make you seem dishonest. And so I think the culture, you sort of fit into the culture or you don't. But in terms of the behavioral interview part, that is definitely something you can learn. That is definitely a skill that you can learn, because there's so many people I've helped, really smart people, like very successful, worked in big companies and startups, and they're a bit overconfident in their communication abilities, and so they go in without too much preparation, and then their feedback is like, oh, they didn't really dive too deep into their examples, or they didn't really structure what they were saying. And I think if they would have practiced for like a few hours, they could have probably got the job. So that's just sort of, speaking from experience.
Absolutely. I have another question here. It says, does they look at your education, like universities, percentages, and all? Like probably the person means the grades and this kind of stuff.
Oh, do they look at your grades and your university? Yeah, for sure. I mean, they look at if you have your GPA on there, and you're in a well-known university, top university, like that's obviously great, but they're not. It really depends on the hiring manager. Generally speaking, if you have the skill set, they don't care too much about the university. But there's also a reason that all the FANG companies have MBA recruiters and university campus recruiters. So they go to all the campuses and they have big events. And it's not like at low tier schools. It's at big engineering schools and maybe in Chennai or wherever is top tech hubs where they have universities there. So it definitely, in some ways, you have a better chance if you're already there, because you might have a chance to meet those recruiters. But then if you don't have that university experience, I mean, what can you do about it, right? You just have to have more work experience. You just have to be better. You just have to have more results, and that's okay. You're not going to get disqualified because of your university.
Absolutely. And I have one thing to add, what I think is very important. It depends very much on your seniority.
Sure.
If you are like 20 years experienced, technical professional, whatever,
totally.
Who cares about your grades, right?
Yeah, it was like ages ago, right? But yeah, if you just graduated like 2 or 3 years ago, and you're working at some company, yeah, they're gonna look at the little work experience and your full resume, and it might be a little bit more important in that case. But I wouldn't worry too much about it. There's nothing you can really do except work in the company longer and build up those skills.
And like from my personal experience, I experienced that some people would ask, should I put my grade on this CV or not? If you're just graduated, then it might be still important. And if you have a good grade, like put it there. If you don't have a great grade, then why to show it in the first place?
Yeah, you can do that. So there's another question. There's two questions I like here, or three questions here I'll answer. So number one, how to deal with the job gaps in your resume. So this is a good question. I mean, number one, don't lie about it. Don't take off things from your resume. Keep them in there. I personally believe honesty is the best policy, and because if they find out, then that's just you've just lost their trust. So keep your job gaps on there, and then just be really honest about why you left. I mean, you can't, there's no special way to format your resume or to change it. It's just more about getting ready with explanations. Some people put the reasons that they left those jobs or why the job gap, they put that in the in there. And that's okay. I think that's fine if you put a little bit of an explanation, but don't get into too much detail. Rather, if you have the skills, then that's okay. If you haven't been working for 5 years, that's a bit of an issue. It's like, well, what, are your skills relevant? And if you haven't been working for 5 years, then what else have you been doing? Is there something that you can show, like a certification or program that you're involved in, or were you studying? And so they'll understand that if you can just give some logical reasoning for it. But yeah, I've seen FANG companies hire people with a 2-year break in between, like traveling somewhere or studying somewhere, or maybe they got sick or whatever. So it doesn't really hurt your chances as long as you have the relevant skills.
Misha, I have another question here. Should you put it actually as a gap, like in your CV, or you should just avoid it? Like you would, like for example, from 2007 to 2008, whatever month it is, should you put it actually as like a gap? It would be insane, right?
Sorry. Can you repeat the question? I didn't hear that last part.
Yeah, sorry. I just my take, or like my question is, should you put it as a gap there? Like you would have the previous job position and the one after the gap.
Mm-hmm.
If you just had some gap in the past, but you shouldn't put it actually as an item, this gap, right? Like
you could if you were doing something interesting. If you're doing something interesting, so I mean,
like traveling the world, for example, it would be a nice explanation.
Yeah.
But if you were sitting unemployed at home like half a year, I doubt that you have to put it as a gap there, right?
No. I mean, you still have to put the accurate dates of when you were employed and everything. But yeah, you don't put like unemployment gap, right? You don't write that. If you're raising kids, you just had a baby and you're taking care of the family. That's a very difficult job. That's unpaid, and so you could put that as raising an awesome family, and I did that for 2 years, and now I want to go back to work. If you're traveling the world, if you took time to write or whatever, then you can put that. Maybe you did an interesting creative project. I know someone who is a designer, and she quit her job for maybe 2 or 3 years, and yeah, she was working on some freelance projects, nothing really big, but she was still doing stuff, right? She was still active, and so of course she put that on her resume, right? So yeah, I think that's probably all I have to say about that.
Yeah, thank you.
So there's a good question. If I need to reach out to someone in cold to apply to a job, is it better to contact the hiring manager or the recruiter? That's a really good question. So you could contact the recruiter, and then the recruiter is probably more likely to get back to you in general, just because they're on LinkedIn a lot or whatever. So they're just looking at resumes every day. So they're more likely to see your resume. And so if you are the right fit, or you send them a message with your resume or something, and they want to talk to you, then yeah, they'll probably be interested. The hiring manager, they may not get back to you for a few days. It may take a bit longer, but if you're really a good fit for that role, and if you have something extra to say to the hiring manager about their product, like if it's some sort of payments product and you have an idea and you want to sort of pitch yourself, then yeah, you can pitch yourself to the hiring manager, and then what he would do, he or she, they would forward that to the recruiter. So you're probably still going to talk to the recruiter first. In summary, if I were you, I would just send both to the hiring manager and recruiter at the same time. I wouldn't really think too much about it. Like, the point is you want to get in front of them, so just contact a few people, and the more people you contact, not contact everyone, but a couple recruiters, a couple hiring managers, then the more likely someone is to get back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Someone says, I may have missed it. How do you use Upwork, Fiverr for resume feedback? Yeah, so basically you can you just type in. I mean, it's a the freelance platform, so they have a bunch of coaches on there, and people that will do your resume for maybe like $50 or $100. So you can just type in resume review or CV review, and you should see. I mean, everyone's got ratings, so you can see who's good, and ask them. What I would do is I would ask them to send you an example, an anonymous example of a resume that they've helped format or edit, just to see what their skills are like. Sometimes people don't do a great job with their resume. The feedback. Same thing for Top Resume. I've heard there's a company called Top Resume which will edit your resume. I've heard mixed feedback, mixed results. Some people think they do a great job. Other people, like, they say they only change like a few words and spend $100 on that. It's not really worth it. So I would go with the Upwork first, because you can actually talk to them first, and then do that before paying for the service.
Okay, thank you, Misha. Are there any other questions which you find interesting?
There's a bunch of questions here. So let's see. Does Karis allow coaching for non-Fang tech interviews? Yeah, we do. So we also have a lot of recruiters, ex-recruiters and recruiters who didn't just work at Amazon, but they worked at other tech companies. And then we also have recruiters who generally can help you with your job search and mock interview preparation for different companies. So totally flexible. So you can just submit your resume, and we'll match you with a coach within 24 hours. Someone said, how can we get the slide deck? I think, Karen, you're on top of that.
Yeah, you will have a follow-up email with a short recap and all the important links, so don't worry about it. And we will also add description, the most important thing, into the description of this video, which you're actually watching right now in the stream. Yeah. It will stay there forever, basically. Whenever you want to rewatch it again, watch it again, just go back. It's the same URL, it will not change, and watch it again, like for all the important details.
Yeah, so another question, I'll probably do like 2 or 3 more if that's all right.
Absolutely, yeah.
So does being in a company for more than 10 years, is that considered bad? I'm sure, Karen, you have an opinion on this. It really depends. So I'll give an example of Microsoft, because I know a lot of people at Microsoft, and when you're in one company for a long time, on one hand, if you're promoted and you're moving up the ranks and maybe you're doing different roles, that's actually pretty great. It shows that you're versatile, you have different skills, you're a valued employee, there's career progression. But even if you're, on the other hand, like even if you're doing that, you still are sort of in that culture, and so you may have a hard time transitioning to a different culture. So if you're at Microsoft and then you try and go to Netflix, or you try and go to Google, depending on the department, those FANG companies are a little bit more fast-paced, generally speaking. So you might have a hard time. And so that's why I would say 10 years is great if you're moving up and you're adding a lot of value. But if you're not, then I would try and find a different role internally. But you're gonna have to really think about the behavioral interviews and the cultural aspect when you're applying to a FANG company in that case. So yeah, it really depends. What do you think, Karen?
Let me add here, like if it's a static time, like very static, this 10 years that you have been there, it's probably not very good, because it means you're just doing your job, getting your paycheck. You don't have really any passion to like improve yourself, like to get higher, to get new tasks and stuff like this. If it's a growing process, if you would grow like every second year or third year to a new role, to a new position, to new tasks, which have more responsibility and stuff like this is perfect. It's like Microsoft, they're known to retain people for a longer time. It's perfectly okay to be like for 10 years at Microsoft and companies like this. Whereas like companies like Amazon, it's like I heard many times also from the employees that it's like people there are staying like 10 years there is like about 3 years, 4 years, something like this. And then people shift to some other companies or whatever else. And you know what, if you want to apply now for a better company, but you have this experience of 10 years at the previous company, it was kind of a little bit static maybe, you can still imp up your experience if you will showcase that you kind of won something, some kind of awards, or you actually did some excellent jobs there and you was named like best employee of the month or of the year or whatever. If you will have anything like this in between, make sure to show it, and demonstrate it.
Totally. Just looking at some of these questions here. Yeah, there's a lot of questions here that look. So there's two types of questions I'm seeing right now. One is a lot of technical questions. Am I qualified, or can I get a job? I really don't know without seeing your resume and without knowing the job you're applying for. So I can't answer those questions. I would say, yeah, if you have 5 or 10 or 15 years of experience in infrastructure engineering or product management or whatever, and you've been able to move up and you can show your results and you can explain that, then yeah, maybe there's a position for you. So I would encourage you to really do your research from here and look into all the different job openings, study their business models, watch videos about these companies to really understand where they're growing and how they're growing, and then that will help you kind of build confidence. So that's one type of question. The other type of question is sort of just about how to apply, and I think my general answer is like how to apply for a job. Like, should I go on LinkedIn? Should I go on their job portal, or should I how should I format my resume? Well, just don't hesitate is my first answer. Is like reach out to recruiters, reach out to hiring managers after you have a good resume, and don't worry about being 100% fit for the job description. If you have 8 out of 10 things, that's great. Don't overthink which portal to apply on. Just apply for all of them. As long as you have a good resume ready, and that's fine. So just I would say don't overthink it. Just give it a shot.
Absolutely. Just a little bit from my side as well here, as an addition. It's the best way maybe like to be approached is whenever you are just doing your current job and you are being contacted like via LinkedIn or whatever popular platform is there in your country? Like there are in Germany, they also use Xing. It's a very similar kind of professional social network, whatever, and they get a lot of requests via this network. It would be the best, but in this case, you have to really take care in advance of your profile on the social network to have also all the important keywords and job experiences listed there. It's the only way that how recruiters can actually discover your profile and then approach you and be active in your field. And I see it in many of our members that we are like cheering up other peers and like posting our certificates, some articles or stuff like this. Just be active, in your field, in your specific field. It just also makes a very good impression that you are actually very active professional, that you care about what you do. And many recruiters will actually, because there is a demand, very big demand in very good professionals right now, and it has been like for many years already. So many recruiters, they have it as a strategy. They will just try to uh, hire people or like get people attracted from companies or from places where people are already working currently. To kind of get the best professionals from different companies.
Yeah.
And if you're already employed, still pay attention to your social profile, even stuff like Twitter. Even if it's for technical people, it's very important to have a profile at GitHub, for example. Even in the application process, it will be asked many times to provide your GitHub profile and stuff like this. So pay attention in advance. And I hear so many times that people are being approached by recruiters from a native, like recruiters from some specific companies, but also third-party recruiters, independent recruiters.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And there's sort of along the lines of what you're saying is it doesn't mean that you have to be networking a lot. It doesn't mean you have to be at a networking event or a meetup. I mean, obviously we're doing this webinar, which is great. But you can learn some skills, you can get some good advice, but really the way that you're going to get noticed, especially if you're looking to get noticed by recruiters, sort of like you're talking about, Karen, people just organically approaching you, is by building something and by being really good at what you do, right? So if you are a designer, then put your portfolio out there and just be creating a lot. If you're a developer, same thing, like be on GitHub and be building a product on the side, do different side projects and get to the top of Product Hunt, just get some big accomplishments like that. And that's huge. And that doesn't require you to network at all. It just requires you to build and to focus on what you're doing. And then people will come to you as well. So if you're a marketing person, if you have all this great marketing experience and you're freelance marketing for some clients and doing a great job, they're going to talk about you. They're going to refer you to other people. And then a full-time job might come up, and you can also put those skills on your LinkedIn. So that's the other part of it. Like being active on LinkedIn and Twitter and all that is super important, but then also not like mistaking that sort of activity for productivity, is you still need to be productive and creating something valuable for people.
Yeah, that's a great advice. And I would add on top of this very quick advice also, there are a lot of conferences going on nowadays. All of them are virtual, remote. Make a very good use of it, especially like we have a lot of technical people here in this community. Attend the talks, go into this virtual booth and talk to the staff there, get to know the companies, all these top-notch companies who are very active nowadays. And this is another great way to get your network expanded and get to know other companies and what other people are doing.
Yeah. So two other questions here. So someone asked about the star interview. If it's only for Amazon or Google, or you can use a star approach for any company. I advise that you do, because all of the FANG companies have behavioral interviews. So it's very similar in that way. Now with a company like, let's say, Netflix, they're not they want people that have a lot of experience, first of all. So if you have 1 year of experience or 2 years, they're very unlikely to get hired, because they want people that are sort of top of the top in their area. But they're very unstructured, so having some structure is just going to be helpful in that situation as well, because a lot of the interviewers just sort of have their own style, and so it's definitely not as structured as a company like Amazon, which has been around longer and has a really structured interview process. So yeah, use it for all the companies. And then yeah, someone has said that they used to work at Amazon, but they left a few months ago, and they want to know if they can be rehired. The great thing about all the FANG companies is, if you left on good terms, right? If you're there for a year or more, and you did a good job, but then something happened, and you left, maybe you found a better paying job, or maybe you got sick or something. Generally speaking, you can go back, as long as you didn't totally mess something up. Like if you left in the middle of a huge project, and the hiring manager, you guys, maybe the company lost a lot of money because of that. That's one thing. But generally speaking, they're super flexible to let people back in, which is a cool part about working for a FANG company, because you could take a break for a couple years and go back if you want to. And then, so this is a question that comes up a lot. Is there something like, basically what he's asking is a candidate blocked after a certain amount of time? Like if you apply too many times, or if you interview once, do they sort of blacklist you or block you from interviewing again? The answer is, it depends. So there's no like blacklist, but basically they just have all your feedback, right? They have all your interview feedback. And so if you were just totally not a culture fit, and 3 out of 4 people were a no, for very strong no to hiring you, they're going to see that, and then they're probably going to go talk to those people that interviewed you and ask, and they're probably going to say, yeah, don't interview that person. So in a way, you could be sort of blacklisted, or your chances could be totally not ruined, but less likely for a while. However, you don't really know that, right? And so maybe you interview, you get rejected, and then the reason you got rejected is because you just weren't, you didn't have enough experience, in which case you go back in 6 months or a year, you have more experience, you can try again.
Yeah, that's why it's more important to know the behavioral game rather than the technical one.
Sure.
If you are a bad fit for the company, they might kind of put some notes there. It's still, maybe they will reconsider it after half a year. Now people change. Their opinions and views are changing. I cannot imagine, like, if you are not like doing some crazy stuff, like I don't know, cursing on a recruiter or something like this, I don't think you will get blocked. But other than that, only one constraint I can name here. Speaking of Google, for example, they would only accept up to 3 or 5 applications per month, sending from one Gmail account, whatever, like from one account, and not more than that. Like their system would not allow you to send more applications and apply more than this kind of number of positions.
Yeah, makes sense. All right.
If you want, Misha, you can take maybe one more. I don't know, like there are plenty of questions I saw. We don't really have to go through all of them, but if you have like a couple of minutes.
I can do a rapid fire real quick. So how important is MBA? Can MBA beat experience? Yes, MBA can beat experience sometimes if it's a top school. I've seen a lot of MBAs. I've seen a lot of people get an MBA because they want a better job, and a lot of them don't get a better job. So I also want to caution you to be careful about that. If you think about it, if you're going to spend 2 years going to school, you could also be spending those 2 years working at another tech company and building up your experience. So I would say you're probably even more likely to get a job if you spend those 2 years doing something else. Of course, if you're in like I don't know, some sort of machine learning or something really technical, then it's possible that going to school for that could be beneficial. But generally speaking, I would personally say try and get that work experience in an actual company, not in a school. Karen, do you have anything to add to that?
No, not really. It was a great answer. Thank you very much.
And then someone asked, they were laid off. They've been a stay-at-home parent for 5 years. What should I call this on LinkedIn? Sabbatical, CEO of family. I think CEO of family is pretty clever and sort of funny. So I think you could put that. If you put sabbatical, I mean, it doesn't really matter too much. As long as you sort of put something to explain the gap, and then maybe write a few sentences, and then in your summary, if you're looking for a job now, you can also explain sort of if you've been working on any other certifications or doing anything else on the side. You can also write a little bit about that in your summary. So that could be helpful. And then the Amazon person asked another question. Yeah, if you had a drift with your manager, if you're applying for the same department, then obviously that manager is not going to give you a recommendation. But as long as you didn't really hurt the company, I mean, I think it's fine. I don't think you need to overthink it. I would just reapply for a different department. Just see how it goes. You'll never know unless you apply, right? So might as well try it. All right, guys, I think that is it for me. My voice is starting to get hoarse, so I think I've answered a lot of questions. It's been super fun. I know there's some more questions we didn't answer, but hey, like I said, you can reach out to me. My email is there if you have anything specific. I'm also on Karis. I'm also a coach. I'm also a coach in my own business, so I also do coaching sometimes. And I really appreciate everyone's time on a Friday, wherever you are in the world. And I hope you guys have a great weekend.
Thank you very much, Misha. I cannot thank you enough. It was a great session, and we have so much information like going on. We probably most of us have to rewatch it again later to get all the insights. And we will get 2 books from you. What is amazing, like people are already getting it. I posted the link to the form, which are like amazing. One is completely on the STAR method, and another one explains all the 14 principles of Amazon. And these principles are universally great. You can apply it at any company pretty much.
Sure.
Yeah. So it will be very helpful for everyone to, and we will send a follow-up email with all the important information. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you so much, Misha, again, for making this happen.
Thank you, Karen. Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay, we will just hang a couple of seconds here because we have a latency in the stream. But for now, bye-bye, everyone. Take care, stay safe, and see you next time.